Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is LB the Realist. This is Realistic Studios, where the realists are real. I appreciate everybody who joined me today. So, I'm going to read to you a little bit from USA Today. This is on the presidential pardon of heavyweight champion Jack Johnson, who was wrongly convicted of transporting a woman across state lines. I'll read to you what that's all about right now. I'm going to illustrate 2 points. Number one, I'm going to go ahead and thank President Donald Trump for this pardon of Jack Johnson. This was a terrible injustice from what I hear, from what I'm reading, and from what I'm getting to know, because I'm just now really realizing the situation. But as I read more into it, this was a terrible injustice. And number two, I'm going to illustrate how this injustice plays into our politics and policies today, and why I harp on the things that I harp on, because this is a perfect example of the type of shit that black men had to go through and still have to go through till this day. This is why it's so important to me, and this is why it should be important to you as well, no matter who you are. Because one injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. So, like I said, I want to go ahead and thank President Donald Trump. I don't do it very often, but I thank you. President Donald Trump, I thank you for this pardon. I don't care why he did it. It is what it is. It got done, and the family of Jack Johnson appreciates it, and they don't care how it got done. They just care that it got done. So, here we go. Jack Johnson, the former heavyweight champion of the world and the first African-American boxer to hold that title, was serving a 10-month stint at Leavenworth Prison in 1921 when he sent President Woodrow Wilson a letter. On Thursday, President Trump finally answered that letter, granting Johnson a full and unconditional pardon for his 1913 conviction of a crime that amounted to traveling with a white woman. Along the way, Johnson's 97-year-old road to a presidential pardon was paved by biographers, boxing champions, senators, journalists, historians, musicians, and ultimately actor Sylvester Stallone, whose conversation with Trump about the Johnson case led to just the third posthumous pardon knowingly granted by a president. Johnson was finally vindicated, but vindication wasn't what he wanted. He wanted his freedom. He would have been without any sentimentality about it, said Ken Burns, a filmmaker whose 2004 documentary launched the movement to pardon Johnson. He didn't think, I can get this, I can clear my name. That wasn't him. But Johnson did apply for a pardon in 1920 as he sat in prison to serve a 1-year sentence for violating the Mann Act. Even the Attorney General at the time had reservations about the case, since the Mann Act was intended to punish human trafficking, not consensual relationships. By all accounts, a model prisoner, Johnson sent his pardon application to President Wilson in February 1921, but by the time he got it to the White House, Warren G. Harding had been sworn in, and for a brief moment it looked like the Harding administration might actually grant it. Harding's Attorney General, Harry M. Daugherty, told reporters he might consider a pardon for Johnson. He changed his mind 4 days later. The mere suggestion of a pardon had provoked an angry reaction. Do you know his crimes against white women? Read one letter discovered by the Associated Press in the National Archives in 2011. Why pardon the Negro Johnson, who should have 50 years in prison for his crime against white women, read another. And with that, the file was closed for another 83 years. Do you get the gist of this yet? Do you understand that this racism, this bigotry and hatred, this notion that black men are going to steal white women away from the white man, this is a virus, this is a sickness that's deeply rooted in our society. And this kind of thinking occurs in 2018, just under a different veil, under a different mask and costume. It's all the same shit, though. And you know why it's the same shit? Because the people that are controlling this shit, they don't want it to change. Sure, the times have changed, but not really, not all that much when you get down to the root of it. So I'll continue reading a little bit more. Let's see what they got to say. Airing on PBS in 2004, Burns' film told Johnson's story against the backdrop of Jim Crow America, where the only thing worse than a black heavyweight champion was a black heavyweight champion who dated white women. This is from USA Today, by the way. Unforgivable Blackness, The Rise and Fall of Jack Johnson got its title from W.E.B. Du Bois, the African-American civil rights activist who was Johnson's contemporary. The reason Jack Johnson was so beset by his own country, a country, ironically, which had only recently reaffirmed that all men were created equal, was because of his unforgivable blackness, Du Bois wrote. I'm not sure if it's Du Bois or Du Bois. We'll say Du Bois. We'll say Du Bois. Burns started pushing for the pardon even before the documentary aired. He said the idea for the pardon actually came from Joe DePlasco, his longtime publicist. DePlasco said it was Burns' idea. But they put together a committee that included Public Enemy rapper Chuck D, jazz musician Wynton Marsalis, actor Samuel L. Jackson, motherfucker, and Senators John McCain and Ted Kennedy. At the time, only one posthumous pardon had ever been granted, to Lieutenant Henry Flipper, a former slave, Buffalo soldier, and the first black graduate of West Point. He'd been convicted of conduct unbecoming an officer in a racially motivated military trial. The committee turned to John Siegel, a New York attorney, to draft Johnson's petition. Siegel saw parallels with the Flipper case, and Clinton set a precedent. But the formal process for requesting a pardon doesn't anticipate posthumous pardons, so Siegel attempted to check off all the boxes as best he could. Full name: John Arthur Jack Johnson, the first African-American world heavyweight boxing champion. Address: Graceland Cemetery, Chicago, Illinois. Social security number unknown. The Office of the Pardon attorney flatly shot down the application. Long-standing Justice Department policy is that its resources are best used to process applications submitted by living persons who can truly benefit from a grant of clemency. George W. Bush was the president, and Burns said White House officials were even more blunt. I was told by Karl Rove, not gonna happen. He remembered Thursday. That was it. Beginning and end of the statement. Bush would later grant a posthumous pardon to Charlie Winters, a former government procurement officer who had been convicted of violating the Neutrality Act by helping Israel obtain B-17 bombers during the Arab-Israeli War in 1948. It was another filmmaker, Steven Spielberg, who brought the Winters case to Bush's attention. Then President Barack Obama took office, and while some saw Obama as a natural ally in Johnson's cause, Obama never strayed from the Justice Department's policy on pardons. We had no traction with the Obama administration, Burns said. Could you imagine what would happen given the racial dimension of this? If a black president and a black attorney general has suggested a posthumous pardon for Jack Johnson? The black attorney general, Eric Holder, told a New York television station in 2016 that there was no question that Johnson's conviction was a historical injustice. But he said there were countervailing concerns about the way he treated women. Belle Schreiber, the alleged prostitute that Johnson was convicted of transporting across state lines for immoral purposes, said Johnson had beaten her. So another case of a white woman claiming that a black man beat her. Of course, this is way before the 60s, 50s, you know what I'm saying? This is 83 years ago. A white woman said this against a black man, all right? So all of this has to be balanced before this president or his successor would make a determination that a pardon is appropriate, he said. Johnson, Burns acknowledged, is controversial, perhaps even more so in the era of the Me Too movement. I assumed it had to do with Johnson's checkered past and complicated personal life and not the interest of justice, he said. Still, the cause picked up support in Congress. Over a decade, resolutions urging a pardon passed either the Senate or the House, but not both. Then in 2015, it was attached to the Every Student Succeeds Act and passed. Obama signed the bill, but not the pardon. In retrospect, Attorney Siegel said the Burns committee might have been naive about how difficult it would be to break through the political gridlock. It seemed like the right thing to do to right a historical wrong. We weren't focused on the politics of how it happened, but just that it should happen, he said. Part of the resistance, he said, was that Johnson was just one of many people wrongly convicted throughout history. If you're going to get into the business of reviewing American history for injustices, you'll have an endless caseload, Siegel said. Obama always sought a Justice Department recommendation before granting presidential clemency. Trump's approach has done the opposite. All four of his pardons so far have circumvented the Justice Department's process, even while rejecting applications from people who have formally applied. Trump also takes advice from his circle of friends, and he's particularly interested in doing things his predecessors wouldn't and couldn't. So when Trump got a call from Stallone, "I've known him for a long time, such a great guy," Trump said. The president listened, and then he tweeted, "Sylvester Stallone called me with the story of heavyweight boxing champion Jack Johnson. His trials and tribulations were great, his life complex and controversial," Trump tweeted. "Others have looked at this over the years. Most thought it would be done, but yes, I am considering a full pardon." Just 33 days later, Stallone was in the Oval Office. Best known for his portrayal of the boxer Rocky Balboa, Stallone said Johnson was the inspiration for the character Apollo Creed, Balboa's nemesis turned friend in the Rocky movies. That was Jack Johnson, this bigger-than-life, incredible character, Stallone said Thursday. Johnson had no known children, so his family was represented by Linda Haywood, his sister's great-granddaughter. She said Thursday that her family was so ashamed of his conviction that she didn't find out he was related until she was 12 years old. After attending the Oval Office ceremony, she said she had all but given up hope after Obama left office. "I had no idea why President Trump did it," she said. "Actually, I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't give a damn what his motive was. I don't give a hoot in hell. He did it. It got done," she said. "And I now have a piece of paper that says you did railroad my uncle. You did him dirty and rotten." Again, that was from USA Today. My 2 points being, and I'll leave that in the description so you guys can check that out for yourselves. My 2 points being, number one, thank you, Donald Trump. This was a good thing. It took pressure from Sylvester Stallone and some actors in the background. Thank you to them as well. More injustices need to be rectified. Absolutely. Absolutely. And point number two, this is what I'm talking about. About how black men get railroaded by white women and the racist white institution. He had to serve 10 months in Leavenworth prison in 1921. Mind you, she said he beat her, and he was convicted for transporting a white woman, traveling with a white woman, the Mann Act. So when I speak on cases like the Bill Cosby case, when I speak on cases like Morgan Freeman, when I speak on black issues, this is the reason why. Because our history is forever tainted by this disgusting, foul bullshit. This racism and hatred against people that look like me. And I hope that more people realize this fact and wake up, and it's okay if you feel uncomfortable with it. Imagine how black people feel. We're the most uncomfortable with this, you know? But this is our history, and this is what we have to realize going forward. We have to know where we came from in order to know where we're going. And this is where we came from, y'all. This is our history. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video if you like, share it if you feel as though it's shareable, and subscribe to me if you haven't before, that is. Remember to love, peace. See you guys on the next one, all right? Be good.